we finally returning to the office? James Bailey is professor and Stacy and Jonathan Hochberg Fellow of Leadership Development at the George Washington School of Business. Hello, James.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being with me. James, has there really been a so-called great resignation caused by the pandemic?
Yeah, there certainly has been, but we're also maybe now witnessing a great return.
Hmm.
That this is sort of, there's been a bit of a turnabout in people's attitudes after 2.5 years of working at home.
Well, there was this McKinsey survey from July, which found that 40% of those quitting their jobs in the past 2 years have moved to a different sector. So certainly it's just some indication that it was an issue. But you're saying that people are starting to filter back in now.
Yeah, they are. Again, working at home has its own challenges associated with it. And in general, we're supposed to separate our home from our work, right?
Right. That was the idea.
No work stuff home. You leave work at work.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people actually want to return for that reason. Some people want to return, as I've argued in one paper, because they actually realized they enjoyed their commute. It was one of the few times they had time just to themselves. And so they felt that a little bit. And then one other thing that's pretty fascinating, I found, is that people are returning to the job that they resigned from. So they quit and said, I don't need this. I'm going to go somewhere else, and couldn't really find anything better. And so they're knocking on the door saying, please let me back in.
Yeah, forget what I said before. How interesting. I'm also wondering, obviously there are certain jobs that cannot be done from home, but I was wondering if you have any sense of what the impact has been on traditional jobs in the area of supply chain, logistics, warehousing, distribution. All of those are claiming that they're having a hard time finding employees. And maybe not a work from home problem, maybe just an availability problem. How do you see that particular sector?
Yeah, I think that sector has an enormous part of it where you have to be on the ground.
Yeah.
And so as we're seeing these blended models of people who are, be in an office 4 days a week, and then you get every Friday off, or you get Friday or Monday not off, but you're working from home, that's not quite so possible in that sector. And so you might see some people that are hesitant to return because they're seeing these other people and other jobs having more flexibility than they had before. And a lot of people in that sector have the tech skills, the engineering skills, where they could go to another firm and have the flexibility of some remote work.
Yeah. Well, so what has been the current policy of employers? We've heard a number of big companies trying to get their people back to the office or trying to adopt some kind of a hybrid model. Are they having any success, or is this still a struggle?
I think the data's not in. The jury's still out on this one. We just don't know. Jamie Dimon at JP said, "You're all coming back."
Yeah.
And part of the reason he did that, and I think it's one of the problems with remote work, is culture is important. Organizational culture is important. We've got 50 years of data on this, that one of the things that distinguishes mediocre firms from outstanding firms is good, productive organizational culture. You can't form culture you can't form it remotely. You just have to be there. You have to interact with people. Teamwork too.
Yeah. And the other point, you do point out that there is some hybrid models out there, at least right now. Sometime at home, sometime in the office. That can get confusing. You might wake up in the morning not even knowing where you're supposed to be at any given time. But I'm just wondering if this model is in fact temporary, or will it be with us for the foreseeable future?
I think it'll be with us for the foreseeable future. Look, it's been on the way for a while. Okay. The remote work's been happening for really the past 10 to 20 years since the technology has come on. A lot of tech companies had already adopted it, or they were using models like work 10 hours a day, 4 days a week, and your Friday off. So these things have been happening for a while. This just got accelerated at an enormous pace because of the pandemic. And that's why we're still catching up with it. And it's gonna be a while. And I think that there's going to be some collateral damage from this. And I'm just finishing a paper right now that diversity, equity, and inclusive movements, programs, and organizations are going to be hobbled by remote work, because for those to succeed, they need to succeed within the boundaries of a strong and accepting, welcoming culture. And if you can't form culture, remotely, then one of the most important issues of our day, DEI, is ground to a halt. So there is going to be collateral damage.
Of course, speaking as a professor, you must prefer the in-person model. I'm sure that you prefer to teaching a class of human beings right in front of you instead of doing it online, right?
It was awful.
Yeah.
I even set up a studio with a camera that could follow me and a whiteboard and a huge
Wow.
a screen behind it where the slides were pumped in. And I did that for myself and I did that for the students, but still, there's nothing like being live and conversations you can get going. And again, I tell you, what happens is you can create a classroom culture. And you can a culture of psychological safety where people know that jokes are okay and pithy remarks are okay and even criticism is okay. And it was hard to do remotely, so I'm thrilled to be back in the office.
Yeah. Well, do you think that workers who are coming back to offices are not coming back to the same office that they left in terms of the way the offices are laid out, in terms of how much real estate is being devoted to commercial operations? I mean, there is going to be some permanent changes in just what constitutes an office, what it looks like, right?
Oh, absolutely. And there's going to be a lot of hoteling of offices. So you use the office on Monday, Tuesday. I use it on Thursday, Friday. And so, we are going to see that commercial footprint, real estate footprint change dramatically. That's got to be one of the worst jobs in the world right now is to be a real estate agent because all these companies are renegotiating and going from 40,000 square feet to 30,000 square feet and because they can and that's going to improve their.
But again, to the psychological aspect, if you're sharing a desk with somebody or multiple people on different days, you don't really own that space. It doesn't feel like you're part of it as much. And I wonder if that tends to have an impact on your connection to the company because you don't have your own defined space that's just yours with your photographs, your layout, all stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question and one I'm going to jot down and maybe steal from you and
Go ahead.
study on once we get more of this happening and can get a good data set.
Yeah.
I think right, psychologically, it's going to prevent that same connection from becoming. So I think your speculation is probably pretty much on mark.
Yeah, even a cubicle is still your space, if you're in it. So
right.
Has you said the numbers are not all in on some aspects, but has anyone measured productivity and worker effectiveness with the remote versus hybrid work models?
Yes, they have. They have in multiple studies, and there is no evidence whatsoever that you're as productive in the office, or excuse me, at home as you are in the office.
Wow.
And so when you hear from people, but I'm so much more productive at home, it's just not true. There's no evidence to support that whatsoever. And to get all the other aspects of work, like helping a colleague, like being a good citizen, running a team, those casual conversations, right? The water cooler conversations is what we used to call them. Good stuff happened there. Good ideas were exchanged. Sure. So there's kind of work that they're not doing when they're home, and that informal work is as important as the formal work.
So many issues to consider. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out in the coming year. But in the meantime, James Bailey, George Washington School of Business, thank you so much for your insights on this very important topic. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.